Hello and welcome to the Green Machine podcast. I'm David, your host, and joined today by Nick as we bring back our retro series with another tournament episode. We've already covered the Olympics, the European Nations Cup, the Icelandic Triangular Tournament, and Euro 88. This is one that you've wanted to cover for some time. It's the 1972 Brazilian Independence Cup.
Yeah, I'm going back to my roots, Dave. That's all it is, going back to my roots.
What, your colonial past?
My colonial past. This is something I shouldn't really celebrate, actually, because part of this was a celebration from Brazil, 150 years from independence from Portugal. So really, I shouldn't really be giving this any airtime at all. As I said, we're very woke, so this is kind of my way of apologizing to the Brazilian people for my ancestors occupying their country.
Wow, that's quite deep.
They got heavy quickly.
Certainly did for them, anyway. But it's actually nice for doing this one because unfortunately we did have the the recent passing of Pelé, and this is a lovely little tribute, isn't it, from us to Pelé?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of meant to be a 50-year anniversary. But look, we'll put it in tribute to Pelé. The main reason we're covering it is because Ireland were actually in it.
Yeah, it's the only reason.
It's actually nothing really to do with Brazilian football. But yeah, look, it's our tribute to Pelé. It's our you know how don't FIFA want to name a stadium after Pelé in every country? We'll dedicate this podcast to him, and that can be our bit. Infantano. See him with the selfie the other day.
Jesus Christ!
This is our little this is us paying our respects to Gianni Infantano. And Pelé.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. Oh yeah, let's name a stadium after a stadium in each country. We need to find one first in Ireland.
Semple, what's the Semple Stadium? Sempele Stadium. They're going to call it down in Clones or down in Jesus. Yeah, Clones. Yeah,
Clones. Yeah, Thurles, isn't it?
Thurles, Jesus.
I'm not even a guy man. I'm not even a guy man. I knew that one.
But you hate people from outside of Dublin, so you kind of compensate for it.
I know.
I'm inclusive, Dave.
I hate everyone.
Yeah.
Equally, so there's no discrimination here.
Anyway, it's equality.
Anyway, let's get on with it. Enough of the shite talk. Let's get into it, Nick. Talk us through the 1972 Brazil Independence Cup.
Okay, so as I said, there was a few motives to this competition. So 51 years ago, this was actually dubbed the Mini World Cup, the Mini Copa. Great Portuguese there.
Do you speak Portuguese?
Yeah, Mini Copa, Mini World Cup.
Is that it? Is it?
That's it. Hola, obrigado. So as I said, this is to celebrate 150 years of independence from Portugal. And funnily enough, who played in the final, Dave? None other than Brazil and Portugal. Wow. So, I mean, it was kind of it was almost like a metaphorical victory for the Brazilians, but as always, a little bit of an ulterior motive. So, did you watch any of the FIFA documentaries, Dave? Over Christmas?
I did. I actually did. I watched it Christmas Day.
Yeah. So there was the one on Netflix, and then there was the one I watched. The one on Prime, the one with Andrew Jennings.
It's a one on Prime. I didn't know that.
I actually prefer it's the one with Andrew Jennings. You know, the very flamboyant kind of scruffy journalist that used to just bombard the different FIFA reps. He used to kind of just chase them down. Excellent watch.
Oh, I watched the Netflix one, so I'm going to watch the Prime.
They're both very good, but someone who does feature in both of those are Joe Haviland. So Joe Haviland was actually the president of FIFA before Sepp Blatter. A lot of people will credit him, not in a good way, but they would credit him with kind of bringing in that shady, I don't want to say corrupt. Yeah, it was corrupt. Shady, corrupt, kind of gangster motif to FIFA.
To be fair, to be fair, like to him, yeah, there is that side to it. I just don't want to get sued, Nick, and taken. You know, we had the recent trouble with YouTube, and UEFA came after us, and that. I don't want FIFA coming after us. To be fair to Haviland, though, he did bring FIFA forward in terms of the sponsorship, Coca-Cola.
Yeah. The Adidas deal and the Coca-Cola deal. So he did bring that on, but watch that documentary, Dave, on Prime, and you'll see how Adidas were managed as well. So it's an interesting one. But this guy basically was the president of the South American Football Association at the time. So this was kind of pre-FIFA. This is before he was involved in FIFA. But of course, he was, he was trying to build his manifesto. He was trying to look for votes. This was one of his ways of kind of building that CV for himself, I suppose. So Havelange wanted Brazil to host successive World Cups in the 70s and the 80s. So he wanted them to be back-to-back. And of course, that didn't go down very well. That didn't go down very well with a lot of the top nations, with FIFA themselves, and they kind of said, well, absolutely not. So what did Havelange do? He decided to organize his own competition. So this mini Copa, and he used the whole 150-year anniversary from independence to give himself an excuse to have this. The idea was floated, as I said, and it didn't go down very well at all. It went ahead, and I suppose the reason we're covering it is because Ireland got invited. A lot of top European nations turned it down because they didn't agree with it. They didn't like the motives of Havelange. But of course, the FAI in Ireland decided, yeah, this is a great idea. Because when would we ever take backhanders? Or when would the FAI ever be corrupt?
Yeah, I mean, just looking here at, Havelange wanted, success. They didn't host the World Cup from 1950 until
2014. They've only hosted 2 World Cups, yeah.
That's mad. But yeah, I mean, I think any sort of these tournaments are always a bit shady, aren't they? And yet the FAI back then was after a quick buck.
Yeah, weird one though, like really, really strange one, because although an Irish team travelled, and I mean, we have the squad kind of pulled up.
Yeah.
No Irish media actually travelled to this, and no fans travelled to Brazil either. I'm sure there might have been a few floating around. It wasn't really very well advertised or anything like that. Now, keep in mind, we'd never been to a World Cup at this stage. We mentioned in our last couple of episodes, the tournament episodes, we went to the European Nations League. So that was kind of the former entity of the European Championships, and we got to the Olympics. But this is a very unique one, and it didn't really get a huge amount of traction. But it was a decent squad. It was a decent squad that we brought over. Of course, managed by Liam Toohey was as well.
Yeah.
So
it wasn't the richest time in Irish football, shall we say, or in Ireland in general at that time. It was missing a few key players. One of them was John Giles. I think he'd done his back in before this one. He'd actually become the manager a couple of years later. He would, funny enough, player manager. In goal, we had the legendary as well, Alan Kelly Sr., who was 35 at the time. He was at Preston. He is the father of, I suppose, now controversial Alan Kelly Jr.
Cough.
Yeah, Damien Duff's best mate. He also had the legend. There are a lot of legends actually in this squad. The legendary Joe Kinnear, who was at Tottenham Hotspur. He was only 25 at the time, and our thoughts are with Joe at this and his family at this particular time. The other legendary Paddy Mulligan, who was 27. He was at Chelsea. Then you had McMartin, who was still at Bowes, your club. He's only 20. He would,
very, very young at the time. Yeah,
he would. Yeah, a couple of years later, he'd actually signed for Man United. I think like the following year, actually signed for United. Then you had Noel Campbell, who, age 22, was playing at SC Fortuna Con, Ireland's first ever player in the Bundesliga. We did recently lose Noel there, sadly, last year. And of course, Don Givens of Luton Town, age 22, shares a birthday with another Irish legend, myself, on the 9th. Good old Leo. Not the best of 21's managers, to be fair. But just looking through here, not the strongest of squads, as I said. We were missing our main player, who was Johnny Giles. But yeah, decent. What would you say? Decent enough?
Yeah, look, and it's kind of the theme at the time, and what a lot of people would love now. You'd a lot of League of Ireland players mixed in with Premier League players, and a lot of people don't realise that back then that's just how the squads were made up, Dave, weren't they? Was kind of domestic based, and then there was a lot of guys based over in the UK, but it was a fairly young side, as you said, not completely depleted, but it was kind of a weakened side, and as you said, you big Martin, it was just really starting off his career. I mean, he was only 20 years of age, wasn't he? And, even Don Givens was only 22. So a lot of these players will go on to do really, really great things for Ireland. Alan Kelly Sr., I think he was the captain in that tournament. I mean, he was 35. He was kind of coming towards the end of his career. Yeah. But yeah, like an interesting kind of folklorish team, isn't it? To kind of have a look at, and some of these guys who would have been very much unknown. Even the likes of Mick Leach. He was with Shamrock Rovers at the time. Very very well renowned at the club there. And Ray Tracy as well. He was 25. He go on to do great things as well. He was part of that squad, and again very very early on in his career. So. I'm talking about these players as though I'd watched them for years, but I was minus 30, so I can only go on bits and pieces that I've seen and heard.
Right, so let's get into the layout of the tournament, which wasn't straightforward for you millennials who likes everything nice and even. Well, there's nothing nice and even about this. This is absolutely all over the place, Nick. And, looking at it here, I can see why you definitely wanted to cover it. Really, really strange stuff here. So there were 3 groups of 5, which would then progress to 2 groups of 4, with the winner of each group facing each other. What was even a bit madder was that 5 teams got buys into the second group stage, a bit like the old Champions League back about early 2000s, where we had the second group stage. These were the hosts: Brazil, Czechoslovakia, Scotland, Uruguay, and the Soviet Union. Ireland found themselves in Group B, and they were with Portugal, your pals, Chile, Ecuador, and Iran. The eye-catching part of the first group stage is that some of the teams, well, there was a combined African and a combined CONCACAF team in Group A. So CONCACAF is South America. Is that South America?
Central. So it'd be like the USA and Canada and Mexico. So
Gotcha.
they basically had a combined team, and there was a combined African team. There's the CAF. So CAF is the African. It wasn't quite the same confederation. I don't even think it existed back then. But there was 2 combined teams in Group A, so they were kind of the other side of the draw. And neither of those combined teams got out of the group. I think France actually topped that group.
So, Jesus, I mean, they never work.
No, they never do. They didn't gel naturally, No,
they didn't. Yeah, I think Cannonball. I think that's the South American team, isn't it? Or
yeah, Ball or something like
Bollocks or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right. So let's get into the games, Nick. And this is all a bit mad, isn't it? So
this is very, very obscure. Very, very obscure. So of course, all the games taking place in Brazil. The kind of the original home of football, if you're not English. But the first game we played, so the 11th of June 1972, Ireland played Iran in the opening game. Very, very unusual start to the game. So the kickoff was delayed. Not because of any players, not because of any fans, nothing like that. But the band who were meant to play the anthems were involved in a crash before kickoff.
Jesus.
But they weren't that far from the stadium, though, so they actually walked to the stadium. And I don't know if it was pure ignorance or if it was them being flustered. They didn't play Aaron Aveen. They played God Save the Queen as the anthem for us.
Could you imagine James McLean if he was running over fucking
a bit of confusion? He'd be very confused, wouldn't he? But that genuinely happened. It genuinely happened. The game was delayed because of this. The wrong anthem went out. And kind of at the start of a bit of a shit show. But thankfully the result went our way. Ireland winning 2-1. So Mick Leach and Don Givens both scoring. Iran had taken the lead. Apparently, and again, there's not really any footage, but Iran had a second goal ruled out, and apparently it was kind of a stonewall goal. It was kind of questionable of why this goal was ruled out. And as the Iranians were kind of protesting to the referee, Leach kind of ran the pitch and scored. Now, I don't think he ran the pitch unmarked or anything like that, but I think a lot of the Iranians were actually surrounding the referee, and they were distracted and all this kind of thing, and Leach kind of went in. So it kind of shows you have to play to the whistle, didn't it? And it was actually, and this gets even more obscure. That 2-1 win against Iran, that was Ireland's first competitive win, if you could even call it competitive, in 19 games, which spanned over 4 years.
Jesus.
So it was a dark time for Irish football, really. But this was kind of a little welcome relief. I don't even know if you can call it competitive, but a win against the mighty Iran, or IRA as they've become known in the last couple of months.
On that bombshell, oh God, I shouldn't say that either. Oh God, I think YouTube are going to be coming after this one, Nick. Let's have a look at the next game. Ecuador, wasn't it? Talk us through that one.
Yeah, so the second game that was in Natal, and Ireland coming up against a really, really strong Ecuador side. I mean, they were actually one of the weaker sides in South America at the time, but they were considered kind of a decent team globally, because I mean, South American football at the time was kind of the premier type of football. There is a quote from Mick Leach saying that this was from an interview with the 42 a couple of years ago, saying that the Ecuadorian team were absolutely huge, but they were technically excellent. So it was a bit of a novelty factor, Ireland playing a South American team, even if it was one of the weaker sides. They did win 3-2, Ireland, which was, I suppose a bit of a shock result because, we'd gone from having no wins in 19 games to having 2 on the trot. So Eamon Rodgers, who was with Charlton at the time, Mick Martin, who we mentioned already, was still in the early days with Bowes, and Turlough O'Connor, who was with Dundalk. They all scored the goals. And apparently for the whole game, I suppose because of the size of the Ecuadorians, Ireland just went direct for the whole game. And we continue to do so for the next 50 years or so. But apparently Mick Martin's goal, I couldn't find any videos or any footage of it.
Yeah.
But apparently it was an absolute screamer. Apparently it's one of the best, most aesthetic goals that's ever been scored by an Irish side, despite all of the kind of directness.
Well, back then it was probably a tap-in, was it?
It probably was, yeah. I could just imagine kind of a bobbly pitch or something like that. But O'Connor's goal was quite late. It was kind of a late winner. And we 2 wins on the trot, which was excellent.
That's mad, isn't it? We had four years without a competitive win. Here's 2, like a London bus. Here's 2 coming at the same time. Let's move on to the third game, and that was Chile.
Yeah, 2 wins on the trot, I suppose, riding on the crest of a wave, and I know I said there was no media over there, but the general kind of reports that were coming out at the time was that Ireland were very, very confident of qualifying for the next group stage, and they would have done so if they beat Chile. Sadly, they lost. 2-1. Eamon Rodgers scoring the goal. Apparently, Ireland had 4 Stonewall penalties chalked off by the South American referee.
No.
Yeah, so we spoke about Joe Haviland at the start of the show, didn't we? And I don't know, maybe he was helping out his Chilean brothers. Turlough O'Connor, just any Dundalk fans listen, he was actually sent off for dissent after one of the 4 Stonewall penalties wasn't given. So it meant that Ireland actually had to win against the favourites, Portugal, in the last game. But 2 wins, first 2 in 4 years, and then this loss to Chile. But again, Chile, a little bit like Ecuador, they were considered not one of the stronger South American teams at the time, but coming up against a European team, they would have been very much fancy just because of the kind of brand of football that was played in South America at the time.
Yeah, it's a shame that, isn't it? When you look back at that, we could have 3 stars.
I know, yeah. Iceland. What's the other one? The Celtic Nations Cup. Yeah, jeez, could have had 3 stars.
It's going to be our first one. Let's get on to the final game against your ancestral savages, Portugal, and talk us through it.
This is a great day for me, Dave, even though I wasn't born, because Portugal won 2-1. There actually isn't a huge amount of information on this. Portugal actually went 2-0 up really, really quickly. Literally goals in the 35th and 37th minute, and then Leach scored again. McLeach scored in the 38th minute, another goal in the tournament. So there was 3 goals in 3 minutes, and that was it. I don't think Ireland put up much of a fight by the looks of some of the reports. As I said, a great day for me. I'm sure my dad and my uncles and stuff were celebrating somewhere.
Probably didn't even know it was on.
Exactly, yeah. Probably didn't have TV back then or anything like that. But yeah, that was it. That meant we were out. As I mentioned, Portugal will go on to be runners up to Brazil in the tournament. But overall, it was kind of an obscure one. There's a lot of really good reports that were done last year as part of the 20-year anniversary, the 50-year anniversary, and it just screams out obscurity, weirdness, strangeness. And then if you look at the knockouts, when we're gone, not even the knockouts, but the second group stage and some of the other games that went on the tournament, it just screams corruption. and I mean, it's funny because we kind of did the research for this a good couple of months ago, didn't we? But having watched Havelange and kind of the FIFA documentaries, you can just see what a kind of political statement this was. But it's interesting that we had some kind of part to play in it.
Yeah, it's probably because England weren't available, to be honest. I mean, back in the day,
I think they refused it. I think they refused to go.
yeah,
Scotland went. Scotland actually got a bye. I think you mentioned already. Scotland got a bye into the second round, so they probably just wanted to do. Probably us as well. I'd say us and Scotland just wanted to do whatever the Brits didn't want to do, or not the Brits. Jesus, the English didn't want to do. I suppose Scotland is still in Britain, isn't it?
yes,
for hanging on by a thread. Yeah.
For now, yeah. I mean, I think this harks back to the old story, doesn't it? Of the Irish football team back in the day. You know, I mean, even now in the TV age, but before the TV age, going to these places, getting robbed because didn't have a voice, didn't really have any big players. Maybe Johnny Giles, who wasn't even there, but never had a big voice in international football. You looked at some of the strange games. I think Bulgaria away in the 70s and Paris, I think in the 80s for the 82 World Cup, and it's just this thing that kind of continued, and it doesn't surprise me one bit that the Irish team were robbed for Stonewall penalties. Well, I mean, Ireland, well, I suppose limited, but did finish a respectable third in the group, and we did allude to it earlier, but in case you're wondering, Brazil did beat Portugal 1-0 in the final with a last-minute Jairzinho winner. I say a few envelopes were passed.
Well, I wonder if it was like the World Cup with Infantino, kind of almost mauling the World Cup and mauling Messi. I wonder if Haviland actually went up and picked up the trophy himself. There's actually a picture of the trophy on the FIFA website. We were doing a little bit of research for this, and FIFA actually launched kind of a big feature article for this. So anyone that's kind of interested in getting more info, do have a look at that. But not that I'm plugging FIFA, but it does have a picture of the trophy, and it's really, really weathered badly. Like it's hilarious just to look at it.
Well, that's all we have time for on this particular adventure. We're going to wrap this up. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and whenever you get your podcast, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, which is all in our bio. Thank you very much. We'll see you on the next one, guys.